So I swear this video is not just, the 2 good runs that I have. I did play other runs, but I didn't really get to, I didn't really get to record good runs. On top of that, though, just to move on, this game does have apparent support for itself. It puts things in place so that you can have more stages. The game even has a battle pass for those who didn't know. So yeah, with the paid track too. And I was actually in a set message room with no voice chat, but unfortunately, yeah, again, there are a few flaws if this game is to survive, and it does survive, but again, just looking at SteamDB, I'll show this to you later, 1,000 concurrent players, I'm not sure if this can exactly maintain a game like this, assuming that there are servers that need to be maintained, and are quite costly, but again, I don't know the behind-the-scenes cost of this game, so maybe it's okay, but I don't want this game to die. I think it does well into what it's trying to do, but it does have a few flaws to iron out. For example, I couldn't scroll down on the PS5 when I'm looking at lobbies for whatever reason. I swear that was happening to me. I don't have footage of it though. Things like helping out with certain toggles or settings in game. There are some things that people question, but I think can stay in the game. But it would help to have a toggle, but I don't know if they can program bigger changes in, aside from, changes in numbers. Small little tweaks or buttons to add if they aren't already added in, because again, the game does have monetization stuff, so they program that stuff in, but things like, if you're on a 2v2, what happens then? Why doesn't the game just end? I can explain that later as I show you the Kira game. Or the Kira game and the L game. So, for the Kira game, specifically, I think that there are a lot of mistakes by me. I'm not really a social deductive game player, there you go, there's my resume, but the Kira Faller, as we're going to explain this video is going to be also just live commentary on my own gameplay, just to give you my experience at least, but also while talking about the game, or try to, and then possible strats. So really 3 main points here. So for example, yeah, me here, the counterplay to this strategy, just Kira immediately riding in, is to immediately dart out, which most investigators do. L might not want to do that, but L is a special case. But I'll talk about that more as we get closer to the L part of this video. Timestamps do exist for this, by the way. But as Kira, you do need to make some progress, because otherwise they're just going to rush tasks. Not that I've really even seen or played through a game that has progress go near like 70-80%, but I mean, it's a social deductive game, people play differently, so until people kind of center around a main strategy in terms of optimization, which, let me repeat, I am not optimized here, then yeah, people are going to kind of play how they feel. And I think that is somewhat healthy for a social deductive game, but skilled players, or those skilled at social deduction games, yeah, it's not so great. I can see when other players are not, playing somewhat efficiently, and then therefore adaptive players kind of thrive. So here again, the game I think the game actually does a good job with its tutorial system, at least getting you into the mindset, but let me know if I'm wrong somehow. One of the pieces of advice is not to write around where NPCs are, but at some point, again, you have to write as Kira, and I didn't want to immediately just duck into a room with no cameras and no NPCs and just write, because then that would cause travel time. Like, I would need time traveling there, and the situation may change. So if I don't see any players around, well, the NPCs will report you. They're not the end-all be-all, unless you're playing with a player who knows how to actually use the NPCs efficiently, because that's something I've also seen other people playing this game. And I know it's only been 48 hours-ish since the game came out, but you can still get information. Obviously, there are important ones like, hey, the NPC will tell you that people were writing in a diary or talking on the transceiver. I think people are undermining how important that one can be, but the most common one is an NPC says, oh, 2 or 3 people passed by, and people are like, that's kind of useless. I can see why, and I kind of understand it, but you can still kind of that's still information that you can use, because the NPCs don't lie. When they tell you only 2 or 3 people talk to them or passed by, only 2 or 3 people to them passed by. But again, I'll admit that I didn't really get to use that information as an investigator. Again, I can't show you those games because I don't have the footage. So, and it might, just a short 10-second aside at this point, as I'm writing out in the open, that yeah, it's not, again, the gameplay is not great. I just had to kind of sigh at myself. That was kind of not great, because the camera actually, if you're farther south there, you can actually see people writing there, but I took a risk. Again, as Kira, I normally try to peek here and there before writing in the death note, but obviously you might have been able to see in that that restroom there is a camera in there, so I didn't want to pass IDs in there. So this Kira follower really carried me through a lot of stuff. And I know this is a lot of stream and consciousness thought, but I just have to say it when it matters. And if the Kira follower didn't know, didn't have as much experience and or knowledge of the game, then they still had enough game sense to do at least, you know, what the Kira follower should be doing as grabbing IDs. Because you would rather the follower take the sus and or the arrest than Kira, whoever's holding the diary, which would be Kira themselves. I don't have the first day here, but I can kind of give you a recap. Basically, first day meeting, I think I was the first and immediately called that I had my ID taken. I think that's a very, excuse me, a very important strat to try and do, but it can be counterplayed if you know that a player is, or you catch on that a player likes to really either call that out immediately when they're Kira, or that they're very talkative, or they lack the ability to talk when they are certain roles. But I felt confident, at least in day 1, 2 of a social deductive game, that especially if I don't know why was I trying to masquerade as a Japanese player, because I don't think the game was out in Japan. But in any case, yeah, I think calling ID out tried to give me some cred. I don't know, because again, I was in a lobby full of players I don't know. This was not with like friends or chat or anything, so I was rolling. You're basically rolling the dice, but that doesn't mean you don't try and figure out how other players are playing. And I'm kind of basing my own little to scarce knowledge on social deductive gaming on the fact that people are going to assume that newer players are not going to be as forefront about their, about speaking out and whatnot. So I try to turn that against them by acting as an investigator who immediately either knows what they're doing or talks to some extent. But at the same time, gameplay-wise, like if something happens during the action phase, you just have to call someone out. I think a few people saw me, but maybe one or two of them did not recognize it. Like for example, when I go into a lobby and I assume the host knows what they're doing, and I assume that people who have, certain monetization things at least kind of know what they're doing. But even then, you have to still base things on gameplay. Like, for example, if I were an investigator and I see someone pull out the Death Note, for those who don't know about this game, or Death Note in general, then yeah, they're probably Kira. They can hand it off. That's a nuance in this game. They can hand the diary off to the Kira follower, but that's still one person down that you don't want, or one person out of action. You know that person is a follower or Kira by the time you arrest them. And to flip that around, there are some L things that I do need to talk about. I need to remind myself of that because it's kind of important to talk about. But in the meanwhile, yeah, listening to NPCs, learning that 2 or 3 people passed, learning about the transceiver I might as well talk about, and I was kind of late voting there, so that does, I think, in the week 1 or day 1 to 3 meta of a social deductive game, when you're last, usually people think, oh, they're actually a traitor, and they didn't want to vote immediately. So that's what I was kind of chiding myself for at that point. But yeah, as Kira there, this is my very first game, by the way, so that was not very good. But as I move into it, and I'll still talk about things, I still write in the beginning. I think that's strong to do if you suspect that people don't know that you're doing so as Kira, but at the same time, like I may have mentioned earlier, the immediate counterplay is to just run out as an investigator at least and see if anyone's kind of lagging behind, which I have done, like, I think every day there's been someone who kind of passed by me or seen me from the corner of their eye, so I could have easily been sussed out as Kira. Again, let me repeat one more time. My Kira gameplay was not the best here. I'm kind of hovering around here. This doesn't look good, but I can, if I were, well, I am Kira, I would say that, I was trying to look for the best route over there because I was checking my map. You have to come up with some excuse, even though voice chat isn't on and only set and messages are on. I think I got the decoy here as well, because you don't always need to do, but you should probably do the task that you're meant to do when L calls for them. Like setting up surveillance cameras, but since you're Kira, you're not really going to set them up. Getting rid of the decoy, things like that. But obviously, if you can't do it, you can't do it. I think at this point, though, I was kind of hovering around and not really looking at the joint investigation. I think the person I was doing a joint investigation with was there, but I'm here too, so I can also say that I was there doing it. I think that was what was running through my mind. Again, this footage is a bit old, but I was doing my best. And then I think I also tried to duck into that warehouse really quickly over to the left because the follower passed by, but either they didn't have any IDs, maybe they didn't see me, but again, I can at least tell you what I was going on. If anyone watching this video was in this lobby. But otherwise, I am trying to play as a researcher. There, I kind of took a check. I didn't think anyone was behind me, so I felt it was safe to kind of run in and write on the death note. I kind of try to figure out blind spots in this game as well. So blind spots meaning where can you see people and where you can't, both as investigator and as Kira's side. Because if you know those blind spots, well, the counterplay is then knowing where those blind spots are and checking them. But otherwise, that NPC definitely reported, and I think you see it too during the meeting phase, that they reported seeing people writing on a note, and that's there. Okay, yeah, that would have been dangerous. I should have seen them. If you go back and look really quickly there, you do see an outline of someone running close by. I should have seen that, but thankfully it was the follower and not anyone important. Or not anyone on the investigation side. So, yeah, again, I really thank the Kira follower team for doing their job. And then I see people coming, so I'm just like, oh yeah, look, I'm interrogating the NPC. It's perfectly fine. But yeah, otherwise, I think I also tried to figure out L, but there wasn't really a lot for me to go on. Maybe you, the viewer, can tell based on the, day 2 onward, because obviously I didn't show you day 1. But I don't think, as we get nearer to the L part of this video, I don't think a lot of Ls are really trying to avoid contact. And what I mean by that is, when an investigation happens, or when they're trying to do their jobs, they, more often than not, go towards, L events, Kira events. And that, I don't really agree with that, but I understand it. And even then, the math is kind of on your side, kind of. If the meta, and I from what I've read, the meta is to really suss out anyone who doesn't immediately go to investigations, like I was. But I tried to say a thing there, because obviously Kira has all the information about themselves. So at this point, I'm pretty sure that any a more experienced and or knowledgeable player would have sussed me out by now. But again, it depends. I don't know for sure, right? I'm not a social deductive player, but I can only report my own experiences and my own thought processes. So I tried to say, I think I was trying to say I was at the Japanese restaurant, because I was saying that was where my thing was. But I mean, the other person who was on the joint investigation is dead, so it's not like I could really confirm that. And by that point, maybe it was a bit suspicious, but I didn't want to say nothing. So I'm going through and looking at the set message. I think there is a difference between set messages and whatnot, and playing on voice chat. And from what I've seen and heard, voice chat is just a cacophony of people shouting. So, I think it's a more peaceful... It's definitely a different gameplay experience. Is it better? I think voice chat is still the more interesting pick, but at the same time... And if I didn't already say it already, yes, there was still voice chat, even though there were set messages here, so definitely some flaws to work out, if not some bugs, but hey. So at this point, I think it's game over, question mark, because I think I go to, and depending on who L chooses, I think, yeah, the follower gets so, if you didn't know, or you have yet to play this game and just want some information for clarity's sake, this is not even spoilers. If whoever is, so what happens here is when someone gets arrested, the person making the arrest that you see on screen and the person who's arrested are tied together, and the person who's arrested is tied to the person who arrested them, if they are not jailed. You're jailed as the follower if you have an ID on you, and obviously if Kira gets arrested, the game's over because the death note gets taken out. But in this case, since I write A, I'll use letters for the names of the players here. Since A has arrested the follower, and I'm gonna get rid of A now, that means the follower is free, and then I just need to go find L. At this point in this game, it's pretty much checkmate, because there should be little to no way that L, if the remaining L gets rid, can avoid getting their ID taken by Kira or the follower, just by nature. Now, if it's Kira or the follower trying to chase L, it is still possible to kite, but not like that. So at this point, I mean, I didn't do this to gloat. That's literally the fastest way to end the game. So, yeah. But as we move into the L match, we can talk about L stuff. Yeah, my Kira gameplay, I don't think it was really, really good at all. But I did my best. I tried. And you, the viewer, can decide. But in terms of just this game in general, I want to keep stating this for the record, at least, that I do hope that this game somehow survives. I know it has Battle Pass, and I know it already does things that some people might not like, but games like this that run on have actually a maintenance cost, they need to get their money from somewhere. And the initial money since this game is only like up to $10 or minimum $9.99 USD, as you move into the L match, this game is, I think, $9.99 USD. More if you want to get like basically some cosmetics with the game. But on PS Plus, it's free if you have a PS Plus. And then it does cost the same price on on PlayStation 5. So yeah. But as we move to the L match, so I talked about some L strat or what people might be doing as L, and I think personally from what I've seen, this is more an opinion than fact, obviously, but a lot of people who are complaining that L dies day one, it can be unfortunate. Like, you could have no control if the follower just decides to chase you as L to the end of time. But I think what's actually happening is that as L, you're kind of trying to do your tasks and doing the L events or cure events immediately, and that gets you killed. The reason for that is the L events and the cure events are primary ways to kind of force people together. And I know L's events are normally not supposed to be like that, but by nature they can, because people will run towards a location, whether to get a surveillance camera, whether to look for the collaborator. There I kind of make a mistake there, so if H were Kira team, I could have died there. But definitely Kira events kind of urge people to crowd around to, do things. So as L, I think people running in as L and getting their IDs taken and then just getting RNG'd out, because again, to remind anyone, and for those who don't know, the only way L can die is if, they get their name written down. Now, there are two main ways for that to happen, but IDs are pretty much the RNG way, in terms of, your ID gets taken somewhere, including Kira events, when people crowd around, and then Kira just decides to write your name, even if they don't know you're L. If they have a suspicion you're L, though, that can get kind of bad. But by that same notion, if you play too sus and, you play away like I was doing here, what could happen is that you get sussed out because people ask, hey, why weren't you at the investigation? And either you out yourself as L and risk getting ganged up on by Kira and the follower, or you try to work your best but fail and then you get arrested, and then your name gets published. So that's the punishment for arresting innocents or investigators or L in this game, is that Kira immediately gets their name because it's publicized. I'm doing air quotes in real life. And then Kira writes her name down and you die. Most of the time I've seen Kiras do that. I don't think I did that in my Kira game, but hey. Also, so surveillance cameras, it's good to frequently check them. Now, you can't always check them. I think you're forced to stand still while you're checking them. If that's not true, either way, you don't want to kind of just wander aimlessly. And I don't know if the alert that, that exclamation mark with a flashing circle means that something has always happened, but someone can let me know. Again, I have less than 10 games under my belt, so shrug. So at this point, I thought no one was going to go to it, so I thought it was safe to kind of fake like I was here, but then I see a whole host of people behind me, and so I'm like, I can't walk back now, because then that looks suspicious. So I have to make it look like, and at this point, I'm like, well, my ID's probably taken. If it wasn't taken, I would have been very surprised. But I'm pretty sure my ID's taken, and a lot of other people's there. With 4 people, in half the people being there, and me just running in there did look kind of suspicious. Yeah, half of the current lobby being there that are alive being there means that people are going to get their IDs taken. And if people report it and they suss me out, I'm going to look suspicious. But I'm L, so I need to try and do everything in my power to not get sussed out. And that's kind of the reverse of the situation in terms of, if you're L and you do try to play safe and away from other people, one, Kira and the Kira follower, if they're attentive enough and they see you being kind of away from people, they might suspect you're L, and the game even tells you this as part of the tutorials. But on the other hand, the investigation team that are not L, like everyone else, literally, may suss you out because they're like, oh, you didn't immediately go to the investigation, or you were nowhere to be found, and so they suss you out, they arrest you, and then I can see why people get mad. They're like, well, you should always go into the investigation. But my argumentation, and I don't think a lot of people have pointed this out yet, is that as L, if you immediately run, and while I think L gets more experience for doing investigation tasks, but again, the problem is that you huddle around, and so if you go against like Akira, either who can suss out who L is or just gets lucky, L gets their ID taken, and then they just get written in the death note. So let me run the numbers for you. So pretend that you're in a 10-person lobby. You do an investigation event, L goes to, and everyone kind of crowds around, and you can try to suss people out, but we're going to ignore that because I'm about to explain my point. So there are 8 people, Kira takes like half of their IDs, and even if that's not the case, let's say they only take 2 IDs, but L is part of them. So now, since by default Kira can kill 2 people each action phase, you are gambling on a 25% chance that L does not write their name in the book, Kira does not write L's name in the notebook. So I would rather be sussed and have a chance to be arrested than have a guaranteed 25% chance to get my name written in the notebook. But at the same time, again, the game's only 48 hours old, and what I mean by that is Kira's might not immediately get that. If Akira does not feel that they're sussed out, they're not gonna really try to scramble to figure out who L is and kill them, which is what you can do in this game, because the only way for Kira to really lose is to get arrested. Now, does it get easier or harder to arrest Kira? Depends on what happens in game, and if the follower gets arrested, actually, by having an ID on them. But at this point, yeah, so I would rather gamble on being sus and getting arrested, because the other side is my ID's taken and I can be killed at any time, because that's the other branch of how to get rid of L. And you can't, unless your ID's taken or you get arrested, you cannot be killed as L. That's what I'm trying to say here. So I'd rather be sus and kind of stay away. But then the flip side of that is the main counter is that Kira figures out who wasn't there and kind of figures out that they're L. But hey, so yeah, as we move into actual what's going on screen and commentating on it, during the meeting phase, I think even with 10 people at the end of day 1, you want to take the initiative as L, and that does require, you might make a wrong guess, but I would rather have an active L that may be wrong than an L who's silent. And the reason for that is whoever is L might get things wrong here and there, but so I said incident at restroom resolved. It was not resolved, so that's why I understand why F said that I was suspicious. But yeah, so I think so even if L is wrong in guiding the meeting time, and that's why some people were questioning why the meeting time is so long. It's because L needs to really take an active role in asking questions. Thankfully, the game pauses while L is asking a question, but when you're giving meeting guidance, as the game says, I think L needs to take an active part, and even if L is wrong, the investigation team or Kira can try to, give evidence or swerve things. So basically, to immerse yourself, you are literally playing L. And here I say D. I felt pretty sure that B was safe, so that's why I said on D. I didn't know about G. G was also there. I know G was there because if you were paying attention to the chat log, B and G reported that they were at the restroom. But I felt more confident in B because, as we get into our next point, toggle ID take was not on, which means that if I rubbed up against B and I didn't get my ID taken, they have to be innocent. And then again, I can kind of forgive people. It's only been 48 hours, so you might just leave things at default, but I really think that should be something that you toggle on. But as it's toggled off, and yeah, I'm saying that right, you need to toggle it on to have it toggled to prevent yourself from taking IDs, because you can toggle it on and off. Otherwise, if it's off, Kira and the follower are forced to take IDs, which leads to this situation. Because at this point, I think, if I remember perceptive, I don't remember if I realized this or not. In the bathroom, B got their ID taken, and I know B is innocent, which means that, and G reported their ID gone as well. But I know I rubbed up against B, so I for sure should know that B is innocent, and that's why even though L doesn't need to note things down in the notebook, I do it for myself, so I'm like, okay, so I know these people were there, and I think that they're innocent, but again, I don't remember exactly what happened. At this point, yeah, I finally get your body, so sorry for leaving you there. I thought someone would actually investigate the body. I guess they didn't just see, or they didn't want to stay around and get their IDs taken. So I can imagine a world where that person was like, why isn't anyone picking up my notebook? In my defense, I'm L, so I don't want to get my ID taken. And if you've heard what I've been saying, I would rather leave your body there than get my ID taken and lose the game, basically. So yeah, This is what I do. So at this point, I think I was suspicious of A because I picked up C. I think C's notebook. I picked up the dying message and it said A and G wording, and I couldn't really confirm A because I didn't really see A around. So in my priority, I was like A and then everyone else. But hey. And at this point, yeah, so the incident resolved, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm a little sus here just standing here, and so I'm just gonna do this testimony here. I could have gotten caught there. If Kira really wanted to, or the follower really wanted to, I would have had my ID taken there. But I do try to stay away, and yeah, I know I'm acting very suspicious too, because I was literally not there. So B has good reason to follow me around, because I didn't report my ID missing either. So... but it wasn't missing, and so the reason why I didn't want to call my ID missing, which might have been a thing, as I'm like, no, what if you're actually bad? Is that obviously Kira and the follower know whose IDs were taken. The follower is arrested now, but Kira knows who may or may not know whose IDs are taken, and so I didn't want to give Kira a reason why to be like, oh, he's lying, but why is he lying? So there, I kind of saw the doors open really quickly, and so I looked back on the camera. I was like, just in case, and then, yeah, as you saw there, now I know who Kira is. So that's basically a gimme as L. If you see L pull out if you see Kira pull out the Death Note, they are at least bad, because again, at this point though, I know it's Kira because the follower's arrested, and so I just go and hide in this warehouse. But at the same time, so at this point, some players who are more experienced or knowledgeable may be like, well, there's a camera in the room. Kira should have seen the camera, but sometimes you don't. And to be fair, L isn't always looking at the cameras, maybe, so maybe they felt it was safe instead, but it wasn't. And that they know that because L immediately said, hey, meeting room. Someone who could be Kira is at the meeting room. But yeah. So A is dead and H is dead, and A was the only one I was sus of, so now I'm just like, well, obviously I saw G, but if I didn't know, then I'd be like, okay, it's not B, so I can trust B. But at this point, yes, I saw that G, G, yeah, G pulled out the Death Note. If I said anything wrong, just know it's me. I did make a mistake. But yeah, here I saw G pull out the notebook, so I say, as L, I say G is suspicious. So I don't know what else to say. I am kind of waiting around just to try and not out myself as L. Not that it matters. I think I was planning to say I was L at some point just to do it. And so G said that the ID was stolen a bit late, and as L, I saw it anyway. And yeah, as you can already see, I didn't see it at this point. I was going to say I'm L, but everyone else already voted G, so I'm just like, eh. And so I give F the honors because it's game over. So yeah, that's that. But without further ado, I think there are things I didn't say. Again, this is more like a stream of consciousness video anyway, so if it sounds like I'm blabbering around, it's because I am working off some notes that I wrote down, but the game does have its good points. It also has its bad points. So one other thing I would like to talk about is the topic of, I guess, the 2v2. So the reason why the game doesn't end in 2v2 is because I'm pretty sure during the meeting phase, if there's a tie, L decides. But again, please correct me if I'm wrong. And because of that, that means that when L decides who gets arrested out of a tie, then you have a chance to arrest the follower, and therefore you still kind of have a chance to survive, because for all you know, the last two investigators may have not had their IDs taken yet. So, yeah. But without further ado, as we move into the numbers behind it. So this is SteamDB, and yeah, this doesn't account for PlayStation players, sorry. But yeah, again, I don't know. Maybe 1,000 people playing concurrently and always buying, $10 to $20 of not merchandise, but monetization is good enough. Maybe it's not. I can't be entirely sure, but I would be. That's why I'm kind of scared for the game, because maybe this is not the numbers that people. Again, I don't know what the goal is, but if I were to think about other people's perspective, like the normal players' perspectives, I don't think, if just for retention's sake, several hundred can be good enough, or up to 1,000 is good enough for the game to survive. Again, let me state for the record, I hope the game does survive somehow. So yeah, there are monetization things. So let's just assume that 10,000 people played the game, but they actually bought like $20 worth. So they earned a fair bit, but that's only relative to, again, how much it costs to maintain this game and keep working on this game. So if nothing else, maybe the game is a test, but for the sake of, actually being a game, that's why I was kind of confused about why the game didn't have any other way to, if it depends on servers, I don't think that should be the case, because that means the game is going to die if it needs to stop, maintaining itself. But yeah, without further ado, if you have anything to say, if you want to support me for whatever reason, as I kind of just loop back into the charts, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, yeah, the gameplay is what it is. I just want to give at least my thoughts, so it's at least data for anyone who knows what they're talking about to talk about. But yeah, that's it. I won't take more of your time. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Bye!